It finally happened, or at least that is how it felt in the moment. The line that so many believed would never be crossed suddenly seemed to blur, leaving fans stunned and divided. When Heughan and Caitriona Balfe appeared to step beyond their usual boundaries, the reaction was immediate and intense. For some, it was long overdue; for others, deeply unsettling. For years, their public dynamic had followed a familiar pattern. Warm but controlled, close but carefully measured, always stopping just short of feeding speculation. That restraint became part of their identity as a pair, something fans learned to expect and even rely on. The idea that this balance could shift felt almost unthinkable. That is why the moment landed with such force. It was not loud or dramatic, but it was unmistakably different. A gesture, a tone, a choice that did not fit neatly into the rules everyone assumed were firmly in place. The deviation was small, yet impossible to ignore. What made it feel like a line had been crossed was context. This was not their first public interaction, nor their first moment of closeness. But it was the first time the usual safety net seemed absent. The familiar buffer between authenticity and appearance appeared thinner than ever before. Fans quickly began dissecting every second. Some argued that nothing truly new had happened, that people were simply projecting again. Others insisted this moment carried a weight unlike anything before it. The divide reflected how invested audiences had become in defining where that line existed in the first place. To understand why the reaction was so strong, it helps to look at the history. Sam and Caitriona had spent years actively maintaining boundaries in full view of the public. They answered questions with care, redirected conversations with ease, and rarely allowed moments to linger without context. That consistency created a sense of stability. Over time, those boundaries became symbolic. They represented professionalism, mutual respect, and an unspoken agreement not to let external narratives take control. Fans may not have known the rules, but they sensed them. And sensing rules makes breaking them feel significant. This moment felt like a break not because it was inappropriate, but because it was unexpected. It challenged the assumption that everything between them would always remain within a clearly defined frame. When that assumption faltered, interpretation rushed in to fill the gap. Social media amplified the effect almost instantly. Clips were replayed, screenshots circulated, and theories multiplied. Words like "finally" and "inevitable" appeared alongside expressions of shock. The story shifted from observation to declaration in a matter of hours. Yet beneath the noise, a quieter question emerged. What exactly was the line everyone believed had been crossed? Was it a personal boundary, or a public expectation? The difference between the two is subtle, but crucial. For years, fans had drawn their own lines around Sam and Caitriona's relationship. Lines shaped by desire, hope, and repetition rather than fact. When reality brushed against those imagined boundaries, it felt disruptive. The discomfort said as much about the audience as it did about the moment itself. The actors themselves did not rush to explain or clarify. There was no immediate attempt to reframe what had happened. That silence only intensified speculation. In the absence of explanation, every interpretation felt equally possible. What made this moment stand out was not intimacy, but confidence. The confidence to appear without the usual layer of distance. Whether intentional or instinctive, that confidence shifted the dynamic in a way people could feel, even if they could not articulate why. Longtime observers noted how rare such moments are in carefully managed public lives. Most deviations are corrected quickly, smoothed over, or contextualized. This one was allowed to exist. That choice alone made it feel like a crossing. Still, nothing overt was confirmed. No statements were made, no declarations offered. The story remained suspended between assumption and restraint. That suspension created tension far more powerful than any clear answer could have. As the initial shock settled, one thing became evident. The line that appeared to be crossed was not necessarily theirs. It may have been the line the public drew, believing it was real because it had never been challenged. When that challenge came, it felt seismic. By the end of this first reflection, certainty remained elusive. What existed instead was a shift in perception, a crack in a familiar narrative. Whether deliberate or accidental, something had changed in how Heughan and Caitriona Balfe were seen together. And once that shift occurs, it cannot be undone. The line may still exist, but it no longer looks where everyone thought it was. As the reaction continued to ripple outward, the meaning of that moment began to change. What first looked like a breach slowly revealed itself as a recalibration. For Heughan and Caitriona Balfe, the line that appeared to be crossed may never have been a personal one at all. It was the line imposed by expectation. For years, silence had functioned as a protective barrier. By avoiding certain tones, gestures, and conversations, they preserved control over how their relationship was perceived. That restraint kept speculation at bay, but it also created rigidity. When rigidity finally bends, even slightly, it feels dramatic. The moment that sparked outrage and excitement was not reckless. It was measured, grounded, and surprisingly calm. There was no attempt to provoke or perform, only a choice not to retreat into old habits. That choice alone challenged a long-standing pattern. This is where the idea of crossing the line becomes misleading. Nothing inappropriate occurred, no private boundary was violated. What changed was visibility. They allowed a version of themselves to appear without immediately correcting it. Such decisions rarely happen impulsively at this level of public scrutiny. They are often the result of accumulated pressure. Years of navigating projections can create a desire to reset the dynamic rather than maintain it endlessly. Fans interpreted the shift through the lens they already held. Some saw confirmation, others saw betrayal of an unspoken agreement. Very few considered that the agreement might never have existed in the first place. That realization is uncomfortable. The line that mattered most was the one between performance and authenticity. For a long time, authenticity was carefully filtered to avoid fueling narratives. This moment allowed a small unfiltered glimpse to remain visible. That visibility was what unsettled people. It is also worth noting what did not follow. There was no escalation, no second moment designed to build on the first. No statements rushed out to capitalize on attention. The absence of follow-through suggested this was not a new direction, but a correction. Observers began to notice that nothing truly changed afterward. Interactions returned to their usual rhythm, professional and composed. The world did not tilt, and the partnership did not transform overnight. That stability reframed the original shock. If a line had truly been crossed, consequences would have followed. Instead, there was continuity. That continuity suggests the moment was less about crossing into something new and more about stepping out of something old. Specifically, the obligation to constantly manage perception. The deeper truth is that public figures are often trapped by the narratives built around them. Breaking free does not always require a dramatic act. Sometimes it only takes refusing to immediately retreat. That refusal can feel revolutionary. For Sam and Caitriona, this may have been a way to reclaim agency. Not by declaring anything, but by allowing ambiguity to exist without apology. In doing so, they shifted responsibility back to the audience. Interpretation became a choice, not a directive. The discomfort that followed revealed how invested people were in fixed roles. When those roles blurred, even briefly, it felt like a loss of control. Yet control was never promised. It was assumed. What lingers now is not scandal, but awareness. Awareness that boundaries can evolve without collapsing. Awareness that not every shift signals a hidden truth. Sometimes it simply signals fatigue with expectation.